Outraged workers of Ghana will on Wednesday, January 20, hit the streets again in a nationwide protest over the unbearable cost of living in the country. The workers are accusing the government of losing touch with the harsh economic realities of the country following the double-barreled increases in utility tariffs and taxes.
If we don't stop this thing, they will continue to bite us until we are dead. If we want to tax, you don't tax people to death. You don't tax poor Ghanaians. I mean, even in the Bible, who was the tax collector in the Bible? Zacchaeus. I don't think that's the way he was conducting himself.
The workers say they have had enough of the taxes and increases in utility prices and want government to reduce the taxes. So how far can the labor union pursue this matter? Why is government not handling this matter with the urgency it needs? Is it overwhelmed with the matter, or it's simply reluctant to listen to the concerns of workers? But if the labor union goes ahead with its demonstrations and subsequent strikes, what could be the implications? This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Bryan. In December 2015, the PURC announced a 67% and 59% in electricity and water tariffs, respectively. There was also the imposition of an energy sector levy, which balloons the prices of petroleum products to an average of 30%. There was also the increase in income. Now, a meeting held yesterday with government for the reduction of the taxes and tariffs ended in a deadlock. Labour wanted utility prices cut down to 50% across board, as against the 59% for electricity and 69% for water. But government requested to give 54% instead of the 50%. They also are asking for the energy sector levy completely scrapped, but government will have none of that. The workers have vowed to hit the streets on Wednesday to force the hand of government to soften its stance. We can now listen to Kofi Asamoah, TUC Secretary General.
In the case of both water and electricity, we acknowledge the challenges the utility companies are going through. We also acknowledge the fact that if you are being made to pay without service, it's unacceptable. So balancing all those things, we said that in the case of water and electricity, we can make do with a reduction up to 50%. Water being reduced to 50%, and also electricity reduced from its current level to 50%. But as I'm explaining now, the electricity level is no more 59.2. The law has directly or indirectly increased it to about 70 point something. So what we still go by the demands that we made from the beginning as to what it should be reduced to. Water to be reduced to, the 50%. Electricity also to be reduced from the 50%. And it's important to restate once again that the law, and that is why we say the law is very unclear, the law in itself has inherent increases and taxes which adds up to the challenge that we have now. Because we have engaged the PURC on several times, also as stakeholders, and part of the stakeholder consultation. We acknowledge the challenges facing the utility companies. In some cases, government owing them. In some cases, they complain about monies to be able to produce the service. We took account of all those things, and also from a premise that we are not saying no to increase, but the level of increase is what we thought was too much. We factored those things, and I do not have readily available, the indicators. But then the point I'm driving home was that we find out that we should also not deprive the utility companies with the kind of resources needed to operate. We are equally also hammered on the inefficiencies in the system, the services that are not being run as inefficiently, and also the losses. We drew the attention to all that. So I don't really have the figures here, but we said that we can be able to manage with such an increase.
The initial proposal was 140.
And if you remember, the initial proposal was 140%, if you remember. The initial proposal that PRC, the utility companies were demanding. And this has to come down to those levels. So those factors were taken in account. And also from the standpoint that we were convinced that the utility companies needed resources to be able to offer the services. The breakdown of the Energy Sector Levies Act schedule. The announcement gave an indication that government is harmonizing the specific levies. And in some cases, people even think that it's duplication of those taxes because they were in some levels. And if you slam another percentage on it, it adds up more than even the figure. So there's some duplication in the taxes. The levy is still restating road fund levy, which is 40 pesos per liter on petrol and diesel. And that is to support maintenance. That's the purpose. The collecting agency will be Ghana Revenue Authority and payment to road fund. If we don't stop this thing, they will continue to bite us until we are dead. If we want to tax, you don't tax people to death.
Poor Ghanaians.
You don't tax poor Ghanaians. Taxing people to do, interestingly, we in the public sector, the whole tax system we know, the cheapest way is to put it on fuel. That one everybody will pay. An increase like that, even in the Bible, who was the tax collector in the Bible? Zacchaeus. I don't think that's the way he was conducting himself.
Let's do some analysis now, and Head of Policy Unit at ASEP, Dr. Ishmael Aka, joins us on the phone. Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us on today's big story.
Good evening, sir.
Doc, the TUC wants 50% increase across board against the 69% for water and 52% for electricity. Government says it will give it 54%, but they will not take that. Let's talk about electricity. How genuine is their concern?
Yes, I think that it is a genuine concern because I don't know the basis for the 50% though. But what I know is that when you are looking at the tariff, you look at both the economic and non-economic factors. And the economic factors, exchange rate has been stable over the past 9 months. Unfortunately, we've been moving from hydro to thermal. That means our cost of production may be high. But when you look at the non-economic factors, such as efficiency, if a plant is not efficient, if the operator is not efficient, if ECG is not efficient, it increases the cost of production. And this all comes together to build up for them to say that probably we need more or we need less. So I think that looking at the efficiency history, high distributional losses, high commercial and technical losses, and the fact that we've not been having power for a long time. And again, there are other increases elsewhere, a lot of taxes. I think that it is better if we are not paying them higher, if there's no increment in their pay and some of these things, the government sit down with them to look at how best. If not, their welfare will be eroded.
But how do you expect, for instance, the labor union, when it comes to the increase in tariffs? In fact, they want the energy sector levy completely scrapped by government. Is that possible?
That is not possible. When you look at the taxes, we have about 8 now. I think some of them can be taken away, like the toll debt recovery. That one has been overpaid. So we can even do the accounts and know that we paid in excess. So it should be removed. There's this boss margin, which is also we think that it should be removed because when you look at boss, they do commercial operations. When you send your oil there, they take it, store it, and they charge you. And when they charge the BDCs also charge consumers. Now we pay this to the BDCs, and again pay boss margin. I mean, so we are paying twice.
Double.
Then there's this special tax. I mean, after everything, then they tax the tax.
Right.
Around 17%. So it is quite complicated. Some of them have to be removed.
Right.
Then there's this issue of the energy debt recovery. I mean, it is not bad, but who caused the energy debt in the first place? What caused the energy
Exactly.
debt?
Who caused
Because,
it?
Yeah, these government agencies in Bangalore, since 2014, we've been budgeting for the electricity bill. I mean, when you send it, some of them use some of this money to pay for their meeting allowances. They don't pay the bill.
Now government says that indeed crude oil is low on world market, but we're taking advantage of that to bill the ordinary consumer so that we can pay for the energy or power that we all used. I use prepaid card, and so I have paid for the power that I have used. So what are we talking about here?
So what I'm saying is that if government says people should pay for that debt, then the government is becoming unfair, especially since we've not investigated what caused it. We've not putting in place anything. But now, we should have placed prepaid meters on all government bungalows and institutions.
Right.
At least so that when you are budgeting, you give them this money. If they won't pay, they won't go and buy. Then, I mean, and then after all, you also look at ECG's operation. I mean, since we look at September to December, customers at the East and some of the other places were not served with their bills because ECG is implementing a new software for postpaid customers. Now, while we are moving to prepaid meters, I mean, ECG is now implementing a software for postpaid customers, and it's causing a lot of commercial losses. And
right.
Why do you say that then those who pay, they have to pay more, those who are not paying? So if we still sit down, look at all the problems, some of the taxes have been overpaid. Let us take them away. Some of them are not necessary and unfair. We shouldn't add them. And some of them, like the road tax, I mean, it has been increased by 335%. That
right.
is so high. We should look at how best we can reduce it so that we should, because you do this, if you pile them up, what happens is that it will lead to more customers may decide not to pay. And this will lead to even more commercial losses.
Well, many thanks to you, Dr. Ishmael Aka. He is head of policy unit at the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Let me come back to the studio and continue with the discussion with ADR Labor Management Practitioner and Civil Engineer Ben Arthur, our own friend. Welcome to TBS.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ben Arthur, this will be, if the demonstration comes on, it will be the second of such a nationwide demonstration. The first one we recall was in July 2014 when a lot of workers took to the streets to protest against high cost of living. And how do you feel about all of this, especially as a labor consultant?
Yes, and not just that. In October, we had 12 unions embarking
on another
strike because
right.
of contentions with their pensions and tier 2
exactly
issues.
So right.
For me, I don't know whether this will be palatable to say on this platform,
okay.
but it looks as if the government of the day does not understand the impact of some of these things.
Right.
Number one, let's talk about some minimal economic cost. We have our national daily minimum wage being 8 cedis. Now, if we have 1 million to 1.5 million people going on strike,
right.
we could say that those directly involved in the strike and those who will be stranded by the demonstrations or processions, at least they will measure up to about 2 million. That's the estimation.
Right.
Now, if everybody earns an average of 1 cedi per hour for the 8 hours that they will be redundant or right. they will not work,
right.
at least that will be 8 million Ghana cedis.
All right.
That's for the 8 hours.
Okay.
If you multiply it by the 4 days,
right,
then we are getting into the neighborhood of 64 million.
That's a lot
so
of money.
So for 4 days of about 2 million Ghanaians, directly sitting down, we are not even talking of those exponential or tripling effects.
Exactly.
64 million is on the higher side. Not only that, those who will be indirectly inconvenienced,
exactly.
government machinery seizing. These are very huge costs to us as a country.
As a country.
And let's look at investment unfriendliness.
Right.
Let's also look at the social and security cost, the possible cost of life, because once you talk about demonstrations, those in the essential sectors are not barred from participating in it.
Exactly.
So what it means is that nurses, doctors, and even those in the utility
could
sectors also join.
Right.
So that is very serious. We have also had a situation in the late 70s and early 80s where, because of the economic hardships and poor remuneration, because of some of these challenges, people had moved to neighboring countries to seek greener pastures.
Right.
And it's sad to say that if we allow some of these situations to grow, we are going to have most of our skilled labor going outside this country to seek greener pastures.
That's right.
Let's also look at industrial and manufacturing costs. If we have an atmosphere that is very unfriendly, now businesses will like to relocate.
Exactly. So.
There will be massive unemployment.
Exactly.
And I'm telling you, Ghana will come back to square one.
Come back to square one, even though
there might not be drought, but
a lot of
food insecurity could be very grievous in this country.
We're already experiencing
poverty will be very prevalent in this country.
In the country.
So it's a very serious situation we are looking at. It's not just as simple as people going on strike and that, excuse my language, type of thing. No,
talk about
it's much
strike,
more than that.
Because these workers intend to go on demonstration Wednesday. Afterwards, they want to gauge responses from government, and they feel if government is so reluctant, they will proceed on a nationwide strike. Isn't this worrying?
It's very, very worrying. And for some of the impact that I've enumerated, are just even on the low side.
Right.
For example, if all public sector workers go on strike, it's just like an administration that has ceased to operate. The other time that we had CLOSAC going on strike, government machinery, local government machinery came to a standstill. We couldn't even get people to remove our refuse. And we could see the consequences of some of these things. So it's a very serious thing. And if I compare it economically to some of the amount we have been borrowing from other countries and from other Bretton Woods institutions, looking at just 4 days, going to lose this amount of money directly because of a minimum wage of, let's say, 1 cedi per hour, it's on a very high side. The point is, why must we lose so much money? Who is in charge?
Who is in charge?
These are very serious questions that we need to ask. And it's not just the amount of money we are losing, the security implications.
The security implications.
Public sector workers, and Kofi Asamoah made a statement.
Right.
He invited consumers.
Okay.
He's not limited the demonstrations to just public sector workers. He's calling on all workers, and he's calling on all well-meaning Ghanaians.
And that brings
consumers.
back to the analysis you made.
So
it means we could
serious.
even cross 64 million people engaging in this kind
very
of thing.
serious. I'm not saying this should happen, but I'm telling you, if over 500,000 Ghanaians should decide to picket around the presidency, we don't have the military force to deal with it.
We don't even want to encourage it, especially as we are in an election year. We don't want to encourage this. But see, this is sometimes happening only when negotiations with government go bad. Why is it always so? Who should we blame for this?
You see, Aisha, let's face the fact. When it comes to tariffs, utility tariffs, we have all known that the independent body in charge is PRC. Exactly. Now, when it comes to negotiating on tariffs, when or why then do we have the government at the center of negotiation? What is the function of PRC?
Exactly.
This is what goes to confirm that the PRC has only been used as a facade. So if government is in charge
I'm tempted to agree with you.
Oh yes, it's the reality, because from what is happening, what it means is that PRC is just a facade. Because if PRC is in charge of fixing tariffs for us in this nation, then I expect Labour to be dealing with PRC. But now that they are dealing with government, what it means is that it has actually been the desire of government to increase some of these tariffs. There's an Akan adage that says that ana oja enema okotodani obroni. What it means is that, do you understand that?
Interesting.
What it means is that it's the fire.
That makes
it's the harsh circumstance that will cause people to change their principles. Now, when we have harsh economic conditions, those who would like to stay will be very corrupt.
Right.
They will look for other means to survive. It's just like water, finding the path of least resistance.
Right.
So the economy will be in chaos. And I pray that the president and his administration will set up and deal with this matter. The, excuse my language, the dead goat syndrome and all those things shouldn't come in here at all.
It's now a living goat.
It should not come in here at all. It's a very serious challenge that we face as a nation.
But let's look at how far the labor union can take this. You think it will yield dividend?
Oh, yes. And our history tells us so, that when UGCC and the rest were not able to push our colonial administration to give us independence, it took one man and his friend who were going to the colonial administration to demand their compensation from being engaged in war, which he was shot.
Okay.
And then it led into agitations, and the freeing of Kwame Nkrumah was led by organized labor.
Okay.
Our independence was also heavily supported by organized labor. So organized labor
is a very
powerful, instrument of force in this country, using the force of coercion. And in most democracies, not even military power can quench the power of organized labor.
But it's so worrying that we've just entered a new year, 2016.
And an election year.
And already we are having some of the last time we had to talk about the nurses who went to talk about their employment, and it led to something else. This is something, and you are saying that this union is a very powerful union that we shouldn't underestimate. I mean, going forward, how should we handle some of these issues with labor so that they don't escalate to this?
Number one, the question has to do with perception. If I don't like you naturally, it's very difficult to smile. My smile will be traumatized.
Right.
Now, government ought to understand that paying workers is an obligation. It's not a favor that they do to workers, especially public sector workers, that whatever that is due them, fair and realistic, is something that is mandatory. And for purposes of clarity, let me read an article from the Constitution that mandates the state to pay fair and realistic wages. I'm referring to Article 36 to Clause 2A. The state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy, whose underlying principles shall include the guarantee of a fair and realistic remuneration for production and productivity, in order to encourage continued production and productivity. By this article, it is mandatory that workers, are supposed to be paid fair and realistic wages. So when there's a perception that you are doing them a favor, and that whatever they are demanding is not for them, the way we handle them will be very different. I heard one of the guys, one of the radio stations relating to people that they are going to call their pay Guantanamo pay. And what was the issue? His two reasons are that basically it's a pay that is supposed to make them freer, but they are entangled even with the pay. It's a pay that should take them home, but it's not even taking them to the lorry parks. I don't speak for labor.
Exactly as Kofi Asamoah was saying that, you look at our salaries, he says you're taxing the poor Ghanaian. How much increase has gone into salaries, for this short while? And look at the taxes, how they've ballooned, and how much have, our salaries, have they gone up? How do you expect the ordinary Ghanaian to live with this, to tally this too?
If you don't mind, let me just digress a bit and give you an answer from behind the wheel. What is the interest of labor in all these agitations? Labor has two basic interests. They have the right under the same constitution, under Article 21, to protect their economic and social interests.
Of course.
Now, if we have unfriendly environment that does not allow employment to go on, you must know that TUC and Ghana Federation of Labor and any other organized labor will lose dues.
Definitely.
High unemployment rate will reduce their power, and the dues will also
go down. Right.
Their power will also go down.
Exactly.
So they are very smart in foreseeing that if the atmosphere is unfriendly,
they're taking proactive measures.
That basically that.
Right.
So they have the right to protect their economic and social interests. And let's not play politics with this. It is their basic right that nobody should take away from them. My word of advice to the police and to those going to demonstrate is that it has to be very peaceful. We have Public Order Acts, but when it comes to strikes, the labor law does not say that you need a permit from the police to go on strike.
Right.
And we ought to be very careful
but with
that
the
if you guard the people with the demonstration, they will go on strike. And as for strike, they don't have to come or go to the police
to ask
for anybody.
Permits. Right, and
that's a very serious thing.
That's one of the powers they hold, and which would affect all of us if it happens. But do you think that government is deliberately doing this to workers, or you feel that government really is challenged? That's why it's not addressing some of these issues.
Your first question puts me in government, but I'm not in government. So I will not be able to say yes. I will not be able to say categorically that it's deliberate.
Okay.
But the truth of the matter is that government is stranded.
Okay.
Government is challenged.
Okay.
Economically, financially. So these are some of the avenues to rake in some revenue.
But how do you expect, workers to understand this amidst our challenges? We're still branding buses with 3.6 million cities and all of that. How do you expect the ordinary worker or the ordinary Ghanaian to understand this, that there's a loan or there's a debt I have to pay for it, whilst one person is able to take such huge amount home in the name of branding buses, for instance?
That's what makes it a bit of a challenge to convince people that this is a tax that should be paid. And I will go back to our constitution, still under Article 36(2)(c).
Right.
The same article that mandates the state to pay fair and realistic wages also mandates the citizens to bear proportionate responsibility for socioeconomic development of the country.
Right.
Now the question is, you want me to fare well, but you are taking what makes me stand away from me. So the point is, who are you going to serve with all the taxes that you are taking? You are going to serve the citizens. So why take the tax from them in such a way that they are stranded from even standing on their feet?
And when they cripple, who will pay the taxes?
The way forward then is a fair balance. I don't believe that we should pay virtually nothing on top of what we used to pay. Because of the challenges that it's better to have a commodity on the market a little bit more expensive than when it is not there.
Right.
So I understand. But personally, I believe that the levels of tariffs are just unrealistic.
It's just
from my personal point of view.
Exactly.
It's unrealistic for businesses to survive. And your outfit, multimedia, uses a lot of fuel for...
The list talked about that. And it's amazing how multimedia, for instance, struggles. We have to buy fuel all the time to power generators. It's something else. So we've been talking about workers who are scheduled to go on demonstration on Wednesday if government does not listen to their cry for the energy levy, for instance, to be scrapped, and also to reduce utility tariffs, water and electricity from the 52 and 69% to 50%. They are going on demonstration, and after the demonstration they're threatening to also go on a nationwide strike. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. This is today's big story. Good evening.